Challenge your own preconceptions. Take the ignorance test. Editor's note: Gapminder Foundation has been testing our knowledge of the state of the world through its ignorance surveys. Today, it released its U.S. results through CNN.com. Read to find out more and click on the survey above to test your own knowledge. CNN. In the 1990s, a professor at a medical university in Stockholm decided to test his students' knowledge about the progress of global development. He was staggered to discover the class. Some of the brightest people in Sweden scored fewer than 2 out of 5 on average. Chimpanzees randomly choosing answers would likely have done better, scoring half right. That academic was Hans Rosling, professor of global health at the Karolinska Institute and a medical doctor who had carried out decades of research in Africa, discovering the complexities of the continent and a new disease along the way. His work in Africa had resulted in an enormous intellectual erection that resumed countries as different as Brazil and Mozambique together under the label the developing world. Rosling has been on a mission to inform since the realization that his students and his fellow professors were somewhat woefully informed about the state of the world. Today, CNN publishes Rosling's latest survey of the United States, which shows Americans, like most of the world, are far behind the reality in their understanding of world development, but ahead of some. For example, Sweden. He wants to challenge the preconceptions we all have about the state of progress in the world, hoping that if we recognize our ignorance, we can see what has been achieved and tackle the outstanding problems. In 2005, he co-founded the Gapminder Foundation, which aims to promote a fact-based worldview. The following year, Rosling spoke at a conference run by TED, the non-profit organization devoted to ideas worth spreading. The problem for me was not ignorance, he told the audience. It was preconceived ideas. Rosling's striking data presentation, showcasing software developed by Gapminder, has since been viewed more than 6 million times through TED, which describes him as a data visionary. You can watch the video here or to the left of this text. In May 2012, Time magazine named Rosling one of the world's 100 most influential people. Describing Rosling for the time list, Harvard social scientist Nicholas A. Christakis said he was in the vanguard of a critically important activity, advancing the public understanding of science. Now, Rosling and Gapminder are testing that public understanding. This year, conducting web-based ignorance surveys in Sweden and Britain, and most recently, the United States. Want to test your knowledge? Then click on the image at the top of this article to complete the same survey and compare how you did to the U.S. respondents. How did you go? Was your global perception spot on? Or did you display a lack of understanding of the progress in education, health, and fertility reduction, and income inequality in the world? More importantly, what was it that led to your choices? If your answers were correct, were they based on factual knowledge, or did you follow the example of Japanese and guess randomly? Is it possible that you were informed by the toxic combination of arrogance and ignorance Rosling believes is often displayed by Western Europeans and North Americans, the Old West? As a university lecturer, he thought that his students had a very old view of the world. There was a constant discussion of the world in terms of we and they, he said. Rosling realized the conception of developed and developing countries was hindering understanding of the emerging world, giving an impression of remaining homogeneity of a so-called developing world. The terms did not describe the enormous difference between Brazil and Somalia, Malaysia, and Afghanistan. Rosling's corporate audiences also failed to understand the characteristics of each country. They had a sort of regional concept of the world that said Southeast Asia is like this, Latin America is like that, the Middle East is like that. He said, we have the United Arab Emirates and Yemen bordering, Barbados and Haiti. Barbados can compete with the United States on child mortality. There is no homogeneity between Finland and Greece, but between Greece and Chile, there's no major difference, he said. I think that it's the failure to grasp that the new emerging world has countries on each and every level that makes people feel so badly on the world taste. The world was easier to explain 50 years ago. Rosling says once a third of the population was living separated from the rest at the rich end. They called themselves Western. While too many people were still living with the misery of poverty, he said the new reality was that there was a continuous variation of socio-economic levels. As late as the late 1970s, it was still a camel with two humps. Today, the camel is dead. It has been replaced by a dromedary with one hump, he said. I used to say you can't divide the population of London into clever and stupid. Rosling said, the vast majority is in the middle. That's how the world is today. When we ask about literacy rates in the world, when we ask about life expectancy, the percentage of children vaccinated, people think about Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, the worst of cases, and then they extrapolate to the rest of what they still think is a developing world. They understand there is a huge disparity between the richest and the poorest, but then they think there is a big hump in the poor and sick end. That's not the case anymore, he said. Social progress. And Rosling says it's a mistake to assume a country's economic position matches its social development. Today, the social dimension of life progresses much faster than the economic. He said, Vietnam today has the same life expectancy, the same disease burden as the U.S. had in 1980s. They are only 30 years behind, but economically they correspond to the U.S. in 1880. They are still 130 years behind economically, he said. It means today, countries get healthy before they get rich. People's skills are ahead of their economy. Rosling said that for him, the most surprising lack of knowledge demonstrated in the quiz was on the measles vaccination. Just 17% of the U.S. respondents choose the correct answer. 80% of the world's children are vaccinated by their first birthday. 44% wrongly guessed a fifth of children, and 39% said health. That to me was absolutely astonishing, because it is the most solid and stable success of the world. Now we vaccinate 4 out of 5 children, said Rosalind. It's a beautiful example of global collaboration, life-saving technology, the flagship of ed, awareness among governments and parents in even the poorest countries. And it's not known. China and India. Rosalind says his experience suggests that the CEOs of the world's biggest companies have the most fact-based knowledge, seeking, for example, to move research and development to India and China, and competing for the skilled workforce wherever they were born and trained. The two countries, 25 years ago known for cheap goods produced by low-paid workers, were now competing at engineering level, he said, and that professional skills is also happening faster than the economic growth. Their engineers are much more competent than their income suggests. Rosalind pointed to last week's results from the OECD's measure of school achievement, the PISA test. Sweden, he said, had fallen in math more than any other country. The shining star in the world is Shanghai, he said. That's what CEOs from big companies say. If I want to mathematical, analytical work done, it's done in China. Rosalind warned, however, that it would be a mistake to assume that poverty was no longer an issue, and that while income inequality between countries had decreased, inside most nations it had widened. There is still a severe and scary amount of extreme poverty in rural parts of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Burma, and Sub-Saharan Africa, he said, predicting the wants of middle-income countries is comparatively easy, he says. There are things such as education, hot and cold water, refrigeration, and transport. In short, modern homes and lives. But how fast extreme poverty will leave Afghanistan, northern Nigeria? That's difficult to predict, but it will. If it doesn't, the world as a whole will have a major problem. It won't function with collapsed areas. To me, it seems easier to end it fast instead of slowly. As the population keeps growing so fast in the poorest communities, Rosalind describes his role and Gethminder as edutainer and says he aims to convey deadly serious facts with humor and compete with tabloid, maintaining content worthy of the Swedish Academy of Science, of which he is a member. The ignorance survey is one way of encouraging people to adopt a faith-based view of the world. We see that this as the theoretical part of a driving license, he said. It tells you how to drive, not where to drive. It is the structure in which you can put more detailed knowledge of the world. It's a shelf. Gunman kills himself. One other at Reno Hospital. A suicidal gunman opened fire at a Reno Hospital campus Tuesday, killing one person, critically wounding two others, and sending police on a door-to-door search within the facility amid the chaos. The wounded victims were in surgery, and one of them is a doctor. The Nevada Department of Public Safety said the gunman killed himself after the shooting, which Reno Deputy Police Chief Tom Robson said doesn't appear to be random. I wouldn't say they were targeted, but I don't think it was just a random, he told reporters outside the medical building on the campus of the renowned Regional Medical Center. Investigators said they were confident no one else was involved. Robinson said he doesn't know how many shots were fired or what type of weapon was used. I don't even know if there were multiple weapons at this time, he said. All three victims and the gunman suffered some kind of gunshot wound and were in the same general area on the building's third floor. Robson said. Police didn't release their identities and had yet to remove the bodies. They are in the middle of a crime scene, he said. We are in the middle of an investigation, and we don't want to compromise that by rushing up to identify them. As far as the suspect goes, we still don't have a solid identity yet, but we are working several leads on who he is, Robertson said. Department of Public Safety spokeswoman Gail Howell said the wounded doctor is a woman, but he had no other information about the shooting at the Center of Advanced Medicine, a modern structure connected by a second-floor walkway to the main hospital and a parking structure. Robson said there were about 100 people in the building when the shooting was reported at 2:05 p.m. Officers entered 3 to 5 minutes later and did a systematic search, floor to floor, room to room, Robinson said. On the third floor, of the building. They located 2 people down and located 2 people injured and evacuated the injured parties, he said. Renowned regional medical center was put on lockdown as law enforcement rushed to the site, and victims were treated by doctors on the hospital campus. More than 3,000 police cars, including SWAT team vehicles, surrounded the sprawling medical complex and closed off a 3-block area near downtown Reno. State Sen. Debbie Smith said he was at Reno for an appointment and was trying to leave a nearby building when the shooting occurred. I encountered some SWAT team guys that said nobody was leaving, he said. A police officer was at the door and said I couldn't go out there. Renowned Regional Medical Center posted a notice on its website less than 2 hours after the shooting saying operations had returned to normal at the main hospital, but police were still investigating the shooting. About 24 witnesses were taken to police headquarters for interviews. The biggest piece right now is we are trying desperately to reach the next of kin, Robertson said. At least one person was transported by ambulance for the building where the shooting happened to the Reno Hospital's emergency room, less than a block away, said Scott Walquist, a spokesman for the Regional Emergency Medical Services Authority. Governor Brian Sandoval said on Twitter that he and his staff were monitoring the situation, and his thoughts and prayers were with those affected by the tragedy. The shooting came nearly 2 months after a 12-year-old boy opened fire at an area middle school, killing a math teacher before taking his own life. 2 other students were treated for their injuries at Reno Regional Medical Center, the largest hospital in northern Nevada. The medical center had treated victims of other recent tragedies in northern Nevada, including a crash and a Reno air race in 2011 that killed 11 people and a rampage at a Carson City restaurant the same year that killed 3 uniformed Nevada National Guard members. Associated Press writer Sandra Schrapp in Carson City and Ken Ritter in Las Vegas contributed to this report. Chinese doctors attach hand to foot, handed to Chinese doctors. When Xiao Wei suffered a work accident and lost his right hand, surgeons couldn't reattach it immediately, so they replanted it on his ankle. Doctors drew on the blood supply from Wei's leg to keep the hands alive until they could sew it back on a month later. The Chinese are pretty experienced in microsurgery. One British surgeon told the BBC.